Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 5th of October of 2024. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first I would like to start with the statements that were made by former chiefs Jens Stoltenberg. He reported and he said that Finland, for example, waged a war with the Soviet Union in 1939. The war ended with them giving up 10% of their territory. That was stated by him. And also he added that only this way, Stoltenberg noted, can Ukraine survive as an independent state. So this is very important, and this is very interesting to hear these words from the former chief of NATO, because he was a chief of NATO just 6 days ago. I'm not sure that a person can change his mind just in 5-6 days, because 5 days ago, 6 days ago, he was saying that NATO is going to support Ukraine until the end. NATO will help Ukraine to reach the borders of 1991. NATO will do everything NATO can to help Ukraine win on the battle in economy everywhere, and to defeat Russia, to defeat Putin himself, and so on. And now 5 days after, he's saying that Ukraine needs to give up 10% of their territory, or some territories, in exchange for some guarantees from Russia and from the Western countries. And these things means just one important thing, that Jens Stoltenberg, while he was the chief of NATO, was lying. He was always lying about the situation in Ukraine. He was always lying about the situation on the line of combat contact, and he was also always making the things that he was asked to do by NATO countries and, for example, by the United States of America. And this is obviously. Furthermore, we have another statement from him that he reported that at the very beginning of the special military operation, Vladimir Zelensky hid in a bunker for several days waiting to be eliminated. There was no contact with him. This is the situation we have, and of course we have additional, let's say, statements, additional posts from different media, Western media like Financial Times. They stated that territorial surrender and security of guarantees will form the basis of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. And this is very important, because now the Western countries are trying to stop Russians by giving them the territories that were already captured by the Russians. We are talking about this red-colored territory. And as for the NATO countries and the Western countries, it's also a very good option to save Ukraine in the border and in the yellow area. So everything that is colored with yellow, it's still very good for NATO countries, for European Union, and for the United States of America. But the thing is that most likely Russia will never accept these terms. They will never allow NATO countries to take 80% of Ukraine, and Russia will get just 10-20% that were already destroyed and reduced to ruins during the special military operation. So obviously this is not an option. And we'll see what is going to be next, of course. Now let's move to another important area. Let's talk about the Toretsk agglomeration, but this video we're not going to start about the clashes that had been taking place in the central part for Zabalka block. Today we got a very interesting video that was published either both by Russian and by pro-Ukrainian sources. Let's take a look at this video. In this video we can see two air objects, one and another behind the first one. Both of them were flying in the same direction, and at some point the aircraft that was located behind attacked aircraft that was in front of him. And after this attack, the media start publishing a lot of updates about the situation, what did happen. The pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the Russians destroyed their own aircraft, like one Su-25 or Su-27 destroyed, Su-34. A lot of options, a lot of speculations, a lot of wishful thinkings, but later we got additional details. Basically, later we got the video of how the destroyed air object was falling down. So this is the video how the destroyed, damaged air object as a result of previous event were falling down. And if we take a look on the shape of this aircraft, we can make a conclusion that this is not like a Su-27 or Su-34 or Su-35. This is S-70 Охотник. This is the most modern, the most powerful, the most, the best technology ever system of the armored force of Russian Federation. This is, let's say, unmanned drone, obviously. This is Охотник, and this is what the Russians are trying to start using during the special military operation. You know, the Russians have problem with pilots. It's always a problem with pilots because you are limited with pilots. You are limited by pilots, and of course, it's a very good solution to improve the air superiority by using drones. Because as for the case of Охотник, this Охотник can be controlled by, let's say, somebody very far from the line of combat contact, which increase, of course, which reduce the risks of being attacked by Ukrainian side or by enemy side or opponent side or whatever. So this is exactly what the Russians are trying to do. And something happened in the sky. A lot. I believe that the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will not give us any updates about the situation. But if you ask my opinion, I would tell you that the S-70 Охотник was destroyed by the Russian Su-57. And Russian Su-57 is the 5th generation aircraft. And this is not something like aircraft, this is mother aircraft. So it's like mother aircraft that can control the significant number of drones and unmanned drones around him. So he can control everything, and he can manipulate with drones and to attack different objects, not by the weapon this aircraft Su-57 has on board, but with the weapon that all these drones around has as well. And the thing is that, as I understand, the Russians maybe were testing Su-57 in pair with S-70, and they went on some job, on some goal, on some they were tasked to do something, but something went wrong, and the Su-57 lost control over S-70 Охотник. And most likely the Russians were trying to restore connection between the base and S-70, but they couldn't do this. And of course, I think that if the Russians had additional 10, 20, 30 minutes, most likely they would be able to restore control over S-70. But if we take a look on map, we're going to see that all these events with S-70 and Su-57 were taking place above the territory that is under complete Ukraine control. For example, this video when S-70 was falling down, this video was made right above the city of Konstantinovka. For example, in this video we can see the situation on the ground. We see the significant number of Ukrainians, locals, military forces that were around this S-70 Охотник, around wing of S-70 Охотник that fell down on the territory of Konstantinovka. So as I understand, the Russians decided to destroy S-70 because S-70 was flying in the direction of Ukraine. And I believe that somehow the Ukrainians or maybe NATO officers managed to take control over S-70, and they were trying to steal this drone. This modern, the most powerful drone of Russian army, most likely the NATO officers or Ukrainian intelligence were trying to steal, because they managed somehow to take control of him. So that's why the Russians decided to destroy, because if they continue this operation, most likely the Ukrainians would be able to destroy not just S-70 Охотник, but also the newest Russian Su-57. And of course the Russians, they didn't have the right to risk this way, and they decided to do what we can see right now in front of our screens. Now let's move further. And let's start from the beginning, and let's talk about the South Donetsk direction where the Russians continue their offensive operation. During the previous 24 hours, we got another video of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the southern part of Novoukrainka. This is very important because every single day we receive another video of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainians on the territory of this small village. This video we got, for example, today. This video we got, for example, yesterday. The Russians were bombing also the southern part of the settlement, and this video we got the day before yesterday. The Russians were bombing the positions in front of the village. 3 attacks in a row means that the Russians are over-focused on this direction. Most likely they are planning to do something. Bagayavlenka is under very heavy fire. During the previous 24 hours, we received significant number of videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the village. And today we got also report that, according to information we have, early in the morning, the Russian armed forces began assault operation in the direction of the village Bagayavlenka. So currently there are very heavy clashes. So we still haven't received anything whether the Russians managed to achieve something or not, but most likely they will be able to improve positions. But I'm not sure that the Russians are storming the village itself. I believe that currently there are very heavy clashes exactly for the dense network of the fortifications that's located around in the southeastern part of Bagayavlenka. Furthermore, we have additional changes on the ground according to different mappers. According to pro-Russian mappers, neutral mappers, and pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians managed to improve their position positions to the north of Vuhledar for additional few kilometers. Now let's talk about Katerinovka. We haven't received anything during the day and in comparison with the previous video, but anyway, let's discuss this once again. The Russians began full-scale offensive operation in the direction of Katerinovka. Yesterday we received a significant number of videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces in the southern part. We have this video, we have another video, so everything was under very heavy Russian fire. And after this artillery and FPV drone preparation this morning on the 5th of October, the Russians began full-scale offensive and managed to improve their position significantly. At least this information was confirmed by pro-Russian mappers, by neutral mappers, and so on. And we have some geolocations that confirm additional Russian progress. And the video was published by the 79th Air Mobile Brigade that was completely defeated during the battle for Konstantinovka. This brigade published a video of several strikes on Russian vehicles. One of the attack was spotted here. Another one was spotted in this point. And based on this video, we have adjusted the map. Now let's move further and let's talk about Kurachovka direction, where the Ukrainians continue suffering significant problems, and the most important updates are coming from the village by the name of Zhelana Druga. Today the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of active and decisive actions, the units of the group of forces Yug South managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Zhelana Druga. So this is a significant victory for the armed forces of Ukraine, and we see that the news are tightening around Ukrainians in this area. As you can see, we still haven't adjusted the map in the fields between Krasnogorovka, Zhelana Persha, Pervomayska, Nevelskaya. We're talking about these fields. Most likely, these fields are already under complete Russian control, but we're just waiting for additional geolocations or some geolocation, let's say, from this point, which will allow us to paint everything behind this or that icon. As for now, we are keeping this territory as a contested area, but once again, according to different mappers, pro-Russian, neutral, and pro-Ukrainian ones, everything in this direction, everything in these fields were already captured by the Russians. So this is the situation. The Ukrainians, and also this video means, these icons and this report means that Ukrainians continue evacuation very slowly, step by step. I'm not sure whether the Ukrainians are able to finish everything in time. I believe that they will not be able to evacuate their personnel from this cauldron, and a significant number of Ukrainians will be encircled as they used to be encircled on the territory of Vuhledar. The Russians continue publishing first videos of their offensive operation in the direction between the village of Izmailovka and Novoselidovka. In this video, we can see the Ukrainian positions in the most southern part of this tree line. This is the edge positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. The Russians managed to discover the concentration of Ukrainian forces, and when the forces were discovered, the Russians began bombing and attacking them with the FPV drones. So these attacks took place exactly in this point, and this means that the Russians are moving to the south, trying to dig in deeper between two Ukrainian positions in Novoselidovka and Izmailovka. And if the Russians are able to achieve these results, this is going to be a complete disaster, and this is going to be the end for the Ukrainian armed forces that located in the villages of Kurachov and Gornyak. This is going to be a cauldron. We have been discussing this for a very long period of time. As for the city of Selidova, just regular activity and small update of the Russians in the northern part. Additional few hundred meters were taken by the Russians along M30 road. We expect, of course, for additional updates from different mappers, and as I understand, that now the situation is that every single additional report update on map is making the situation for the Ukrainians worse and worse. And as for Gornyak Kurachovka, every single additional update on map in this direction means another step to creation of Kurachovka cauldron. Now let's move further. As for the Terezk, today we receive updates that confirm Russian control over the intersection of streets Rudnichna Street, Centralny Street, and Shakhtarov Avenue. So this is very important intersection of roads, because now the Ukrainians in the block of Zabalka are completely cut from the mainland, from supply, from evacuation, and from vehicles. Of course, they still can enter the territory on their feet, but it's going to be very difficult. The Russians control everything, and most likely during the next week, this territory will be captured by the Russians. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the Sieversk direction. During the previous 24 hours, according to different mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions to the northwest of Spirne. So this territory was captured by the Russians. And I'll remind you that this area gains some momentum, is gaining momentum, because almost every every single 2, every single 3 days we got additional update on the ground. Just on the just on the 2nd of October, we received report from the Ministry of Defense about complete control over Verkhnyokamyansk. Then we got report that the Russians managed to improve their positions around Belaya Gora, and now on the 1st of October we got report that the Russians improved their positions into the northwest of Spirne. So the Russians are moving, and they're not going to stop until they reach the outskirts of Siversk. Now let's talk about the northern Kupiansk direction, because the most important updates are coming from this territory. The Russians managed to improve their positions along the river Voskol, and they're in front of the villages like Kalisnikovka, Kruglyakivka. They can attack in any direction. The Russians are regrouping. They need a significant number of forces to not just to take additional 100 square kilometers or meters under control. They need to defeat the Ukrainians along the entire line from Glushkovka to, let's say, Novokruglyakivka, and to take as many as possible square kilometers just as a result of one attack. If they can do this, this is going to be the significant disaster for the Ukrainians, and after that the northern Kupiansk direction can collapse. As for Volchansk, we continue receiving let's discuss some explosions on the territory of the Kupiansk agglomeration. In this video we have a few FABs arrived in the central part as a result of this attack, a few more ammo depots where houses were destroyed. As for Volchansk, we continue receiving the videos of the same type. Today we got a few more aviation strikes with the use of ODAP 1500 on the citadel. As a result of explosion, we can see that few more buildings were destroyed or reduced to ruins, but as for the changes on the ground, nothing is happening. The Sumy direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything special. The situation here was completely stabilized. Neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are attacking. Everybody is waiting for something. And maybe the Ukrainians are waiting for another Rammstein, where the NATO countries will authorize Ukraine to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia, and they will announce about additional military packages. And the Russians, as I understand, are waiting the end of the battle for Glushkova, because when talking about during the previous few days, the main clashes were attacking around Vysole, but as for the 5th of October, the main clashes are getting closer and closer to the territory of Ukraine. For example, the Russians restore control over Medvezhya. In this video we can see first artillery strikes on Ukrainian positions along the border, so they're trying to bring additional forces, but the Russians see everything, see every movement, and attack Ukrainians when they're just crossing the border. And the most important, just during the previous 24 hours we got at least 4 geolocations of how the Russians were attacking the Ukrainians, their forces on the Ukrainian side. So the thing is that the clashes and fight is getting closer and closer to the Ukrainian border with Russia, and most likely the Russians are not going to stop. And after Glushkova counter-offensive, the Russians are going to continue Glushkova offensive with the purpose to attack deep inside of the territory of Ukraine and to get the city of Sumy from the north. This is very important because today Zelensky also arrived in Sumy, and he was inspecting the defense in the region. Most likely he was talking with Syrsky. Most likely Zelensky gave his final orders regarding the defense, and maybe he warned the Ukrainian generals and officers on this direction that the Russians are going to continue offensive and that they need to be ready to meet the Russians on the territory of Ukraine. So this is the situation. The situation is very difficult, and we'll see what is going to be next. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.